Michelle with 2 L's, and I am one half of Forceful Entertainment. Today I'm here to give you my thoughts, my review on the latest episode of Leslye Headland's The Acolyte. Yes, last week I told you that I could no longer call this show Star Wars, but it is rather Leslye Headland's The Acolyte, and I'm going to keep to that. So is this episode, last week was a biggie, guys. Pretty much I feel this show is actually it's uniting the fandom. We're all coming together in the fact that we don't think this is a very good show. Last week uniting us all. So how does this week live up to last week? Is it as egregious as last week's episode where we had the witch coven? Is it as bad as that? No. But in fairness, that was going to be very hard to top. No, in this episode, episode 3, and I will give you an overview of what happens. Very little actually happens in this episode. This episode is only about 28 minutes long, which again, I feel is a problem that not just this show has had, but Disney shows in general, Disney Plus shows, whether it be Star Wars, whether it be Marvel. I just think 28-minute dramas is not a thing that should be happening. You know, back in the day with cable TV, a lot of times comedies fall around 24-minute long, you know, the 30-minute minus commercial situation. But when you don't have commercials and this isn't a comedy, why are we getting 28-minute episodes? Like, can you genuinely not come up with like at least 40 minutes of entertaining material when you only have 8 episodes? Again, back to my last week where I mentioned Stranger Things, where they do 8 to 9 episodes all over an hour long. So it's around 28 minutes long, episode 4. But now I'll go ahead and tell you what did happen. And again, not that much. But basically, we see the continuing of the story picking up where episode 2 left off. And we have May, or Hippa, as I like to call her, the evil twin. The evil twin has gone with her little weirdo friend who it always feels like needs to take a shower. He's that person. You just look at him and you're like, he probably smells. That's how his character comes across to me, at least. Her and that little guy, Bro, I don't know what his name is. They are going off to kill one of the other Jedi of the 4 that, you know, I guess ruined her life. We've yet to see quite how they started the fire because we didn't really get that last week, but maybe we'll see that someday. But yes, they're going to hunt down the Wookiee Jedi to kill him because, of course, she's got to continue this revenge tour where she's going to take out all the Jedi. So that's happening. And then you've got good twin, Osha. You've got Osha and the Jedi. They've come to this planet where the Wookiee is to try to stop as I will call her, Hippa, from taking out the other Jedi. So that is literally it. That is the story of this episode. And within this episode, again, now let me kind of get into things that I noticed. One, right off the bat, that they kind of very quickly go back to Coruscant and you see the Jedi Temple. Why are, again, the Jedi, it's like the people portraying these Jedi, why do they have such little personality? Going back to the prequels even, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, even Yoda, like they all have personality. Mace Windu, they all have a personality. Yes, they are these monks. Yes, they meditate and can be quiet, but they also have, like, especially like Obi-Wan, they have spunk and pizzazz with them. They're not just like boring characters. And again, with the Acolyte, when they portray the Jedi, they're still coming across very boring to me. Like, and all the lines are kind of read very wooden. Mind your feelings. Like, everything just kind of feels very blah still to me. I will say the guy from Squid Game, Soul, he continues to be a standout in the show. He clearly is an excellent actor. I've actually not watched Squid Games. I hear good things, but he is an excellent actor. And I know English is not his first language. I even think I actually thought he did a really good job with his lines this episode. So I think he's a standout for me. He does good. But outside of him, so this show really kind of feels like a soap opera that is made for, I guess, kids. But yet it's got, you know, witch covens in it. But that's kind of the vibe. It's like a teen kid show with this soap opera where things will get really dramatic kind of out of nowhere. And that's kind of how the show feels. The dialogue continues just to be rough. I mean, there's really no way to express it unless you watch it. The dialogue, it's pretty brutal. I've been saying this since my first review of episode 1 and 2, and the dialogue has not picked up. It is bad. And I will continue to say again, I do like Soul, but outside of Soul, there's really just not like characters you care that much about. Even if you don't dislike them, you don't really, there's not enough there to draw you in to really like them either. It's just kind of like people talking, and you're supposed to care and you're supposed to have feelings for them as the viewer, but you don't really. Like if anyone died in the show, you're not really going to care because like that has not been developed now 4 episodes in with these characters. It's just kind of like a lot of stuff happens, but you don't know why you should care that it's happening. That's kind of what bad writing and bad development does with a characters and with a TV show. And that's how I feel with this show. So next, and this does kind of get into spoiler territory. So, you know, we've got May, who's already murdered 2 people. And in this episode, I could kind of tell from the beginning, like she's not really feeling being a murderer anymore. And to me, again, the way that the acting, the way everything comes across, it's just not believable. So by the end of episode 4, she no longer wants to kill anymore. Like she's like, yeah, I'll just turn myself into the Jedi. I'm done with my murderous ways. And I just don't find that particularly very believable. In reality, most people don't murder 2 people. Like, again, this wasn't like she killed in self-defense. Like she hunted 2 people down and murdered them. And now, like a couple days later, she's like, you know, my killing days are behind me. I'm good. And it's kind of played like that too. Like, oh, like this is something, like it kind of feels like in this world, are there consequences for actions? Because it kind of feels like, you know, people will get over it. I'll move on. Life goes on. It happens. It's kind of the way it feels. And again, we're dealing with something as big of an issue as she murdered 2 people. You know, going back to a show like Breaking Bad, hence the name. Like when you cross certain lines, yes, people can be redeemed, but typically they're not just like, oh, I'm good now. It's not usually like they murder 2 people and then like the next day they're like, nah, you know, I tried that out for a little bit and I'm good. I'm going to go back to not being a murderer. That's just not how the world works, quite frankly. But it's how things work in this show. And I will say this. So May is with her friend. And at the very end, the big thing that happens at the end of this episode is I don't know if I should call him a Sith, the Kylo Ren-esque looking character. He comes out of nowhere. And I pretty much had already kind of nailed down in my mind 2 options of who I thought this person was. And when one of the options is one of the only other people on this planet with May, and all of a sudden this person appears in the hooded, like all of a sudden the hooded person appears, kind of feel like you just gave away who that person is. Because reasonably, it just feels like, well, I feel like it's probably option A out of the 2 options that I had previously already determined were there. So we'll see if I'm right about that, but I feel I'm right about that. But yeah, that's kind of this episode. Again, very short episode. Again, not as egregious as last week, but man, you know, I feel like there was only one way to go, and that was up from last week as far as that. But was this a good episode? Not really, no. It wasn't as like bad as last week, but it also wasn't particularly entertaining. It was fairly boring. And again, I just feel like sometimes with Disney shows in particular, when you only have 8 episodes, how can you not come up with a little bit more to happen? Character development, plot continuing. in that 28 minutes. It always just kind of feels like they just don't really have enough for a series. Is kind of how it feels when you get an episode like this, where in all reality, very little happens and very little character development really takes place. Again, besides the fact that May is now over being a murderer. She tried being a murderer on, and she's over it. She's over it. She's willing to go back to the good side because that's how things work in this world. But yeah, that's my thoughts on The Acolyte, Leslye Headland's The Acolyte, episode 4. What are you guys' thoughts? Are you okay? Let me rate this. I've not been rating this episode. Last week I give a negative 1 out of 5 hoots. 5 being the max level of enjoyment. I'm going to give this episode about a half hoot. It wasn't as bad as last week as far as what it did for Star Wars, but it also just wasn't. This is just good television. I don't know how else to say it at a point. It's just not a good show. So yeah, I give it a half hoot. That's where we are. But what do you guys think about The Acolyte? Are you watching it? Are you just coming here and watching the reviews? You're welcome to come watch the reviews. I watch it so you don't have to. But share your thoughts below. And if you have not yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Also give this video a thumbs up. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, remember to be a force of light. All right, bye guys.